Is it possible to truly understand someone that you disagree with? That's something that probably weighs heavily on people's minds throughout this year and just throughout life in general, whether it be in the non-fitness part of life or the fitness part of life. We see people with conflicting opinions on exercise science, nutrition. We see all the misinformation and good information and the confusion that comes up when you have to distinguish between what is fact and what is fiction. Because a lot of podcasts, similar to this one, are made to be full of clickbait. And oftentimes, the clips that get the most traction are manipulated in a sense that I could say something absolutely ridiculous and people will be far more likely to share it than if I said something rational. With that said, let's dive into this solo episode where I am going to cover a few specific topics about finding common ground with people and just how important it is. Most people today believe it's impossible to really understand someone they disagree with, especially when it feels like we are more divided now than ever. But what if true understanding doesn't mean agreeing? And what if one small act, like offering a free hug to a stranger, could show us the way? So today I'm actually going to be sharing a story from 2010 that changed the way how I see people. It changed how I see people since that day going forward. And I'm going to be kind of unpacking some of the takeaways that still ring true today. So back in 2010, one of my friends, Kyle St. Thomas, who I met through, it was actually through a church youth council group. So it was just a group of us from different towns around Alberta that got together to come up with like different initiatives and to learn about stuff. It was honestly more of a community thing than a church thing. We got to learn about world events. We got to learn about local events. We got to help out. We got to play games. We got to make really strong friendships. And between the two of us, we came up with this big idea that we wanted to do a free hugs day. And I was big into video editing at the time. So I brought my camcorder. At the time, it was one of those like mini cassette camcorders. And his mom drove us to Edmonton. He came from Lacombe and we filmed hundreds of hugs. We decided to do this because we were inspired by another video that I'd seen, and I give credit to that in the original video. If you're interested in this, I'm going to have it linked into the show notes. What it felt like was, I mean, if you've ever been nervous to do something before, that'll definitely get your nerves going to go into the mall and just be ready to hug anybody and everybody. It was a lot of like younger people. Some people look to be in their 30s, 40s. I've always thought it would be funny reviewing the video if I was to have crossed paths with one of the people that I hugged way back then. Maybe if I went to the gym with them or I trained them and we just realized now. So if you are seeing this video and you have crossed paths with me since, definitely connect because that would just be a full circle moment. But the main thing was it kind of helped me realize that what people need to do for each other is far less complicated than what we make it out to be. And in being a jiu-jitsu practitioner or however you want to call it, I've also learned the same things ring true. So you get to be part of a community. You're working towards something greater than yourself. You have to be considerate of your teammates' health and well-being and safety. You don't last long in jiu-jitsu if you're a total dick and you take out all your teammates. Like either it's going to come bite you in the butt back or you're going to injure yourself through your own means. People who are irrational and don't think things through can't make it through the long haul. Even if you make mistakes, even if you learn slowly, you're far more likely to bounce back if you're able to kind of like think of a little bit more than just yourself. If you're able to be patient with promotions, if you're able to kind of see where you need to improve, if you're able to just be consistent in some way, because consistency can look different. Some guys will do 6 sessions of jiu-jitsu a week, and that's what consistency is like for them. And for me lately, it's been like once a week, maybe twice, maybe 3 times, but mostly once. And the odd week here and there, I'll miss altogether just because of travel or holidays or other commitments and whatnot. But one thing that really stands out is that when we're talking about human connection, when we are talking about the human experience and what we need to be healthy and happy and feel taken care of, is that connection doesn't necessarily require agreement. It requires openness. It requires a good listener. It requires people to have empathy. When somebody else struggles, you should show compassion. Even if you don't agree with everything about them, there is some element there where you can understand what it feels like to experience pain or loss or anything like that. To draw unpenetrable lines between two camps is not all that realistic because of the number of things that can change in life, because of how you can change based on different communities you may find yourself in. If someone were to live in a community where the average income is 40,000 a year and less, they're going to see the world a lot differently when they move to a community that is 200,000 per year and above. It's a completely different perspective. If you go to the stores located near those places, it's a completely different experience. And I think a lot of people would benefit from experiencing both ends, from experiencing people who have hit rock bottom and seeing what they're grateful for and what gets them up in the morning, to seeing people who, via the optics of looking into their life, would be on top of the world, and then understanding how much money is and everything, and trying to connect the dots, bridging the gaps, so that we can kind of support other community members, but then also help people see the big picture of what's important. Because sometimes people will chase the carrot at the end of the stick, and they'll chase and chase and chase, and then they'll realize when it's far too late what mattered most. So what matters most could be a phone call with a loved one, or what matters most could be watching a niece or nephew or son or daughter's sporting event, award ceremony, etc. And if you don't get the opportunity to learn that, then you miss out. So as I'm kind of unpacking this free hugs experience, the crazy thing was it wasn't necessarily like something that we were supposed to do. So a lot of people in the YouTube comments ask like, oh, we tried to do this and they said we weren't allowed. Well, like mall security did come up to us and kind of questioned us a bit, but like this was back 15 years ago. So we had a smaller population in Canada, in Alberta. Social media wasn't as prevalent. Things didn't spread as quickly. Like they were talking on walkie-talkie to understand that there's people giving free hugs there. YouTube was just getting started. Like a lot of the accounts who are large businesses now were just posting videos casually, just like I was. And then I stopped and I kind of regret that. But times are different. And if you tried to do a free hugs initiative now in West Edmonton Mall, I think it would have a different reception. I think the average person would take fairly kindly to it. But over the years, we've definitely found lots of reasons in lots of contexts to disagree. Politics aside, if you look at people's stance on Bulgarian split squats, that's something that's extremely divisive. So there's always something that we can find, whether it be like, should pineapple be on pizza or not? That'll divide people. And so what I find is important is looking at the opportunities to learn something new and looking at the opportunities to create new allies, to create new mentor-mentee connections, because you don't have to change someone's mind to change your relationship with them. You can learn from all kinds of different people without reinventing the wheel. And you may find that when you are learning from people and teaching people, there's a lot more peace. I mean, people treat each other with respect when they receive respect. So if you're disrespectful to someone, the average person is going to respond to you pretty aggressively, or at least passive aggressively. And if you approach someone and you understand that they have talents and they have skills and they have potential, and you acknowledge that you have skills and you have talents and you have potential, it's probably going to go pretty smooth. Very much like the merit that comes with a lot of different pursuits. So I talk about jiu-jitsu, but I'll use a different example. If you are doing pickleball, so pickleball has like that player score. So based on your competence and skill level, you'll get like a certain player score. And forgive me if I'm butchering this, but they do have like sort of like a ranking system that helps them pair people based on their skill level. And if you don't practice and if you don't hone your skills, or if you don't have a certain level of athleticism that allows you to perform at a certain level, then you're going to be limited to who you would be most competitive with. You're not going to be able to just slide in there and just choose whatever opponents you want to choose, because it's going to fall apart. And so even if you had a pickleball teammate and one of them likes pineapple on pizza and one of them doesn't, they can still find ways to work together to better the sport, to inspire others. And so that said, when we look at this in other constructs, even just in relationships, like if you reflect on a lot of relationships that you know, both partners probably don't agree on everything. My parents, one of them is really into sports and one of them's not. One of them is more optimistic than the other, but they work together as a team and they've worked together as a team for a long time. So why would the rest of life be any different? But that may be my bias. Maybe I am looking at it the wrong way, and I'm open to seeing how perhaps we should be just divided. But the thing is that when we're looking at society, research shows that intense polarization doesn't just affect how we make decisions, how we vote, how we choose the path that we take in life, whether that be the car we buy, the house we live in, the community we choose, where we go grocery shopping. It impacts our health. Division weakens our communities. Polarizing disagreement even threatens the health of just community, whether it be on a government scale of democracy or whether it be a condo board. If anybody has ever been on a condominium board, if you have one person that's looking to make things polarizing, it makes it so that you can get less things done. And so as homeowners, it's kind of like having a leak in the boat. Whereas if you can gather all these very diverse homeowners together and they can find ways to collaborate and see each other's strengths and acknowledge the differences respectfully, but still move forward, you could get the board out of debt. You could keep the balance good. You could leverage each other's connections to find the best tradespeople. And that's generally what has happened with my condo board in recent years, because we've kind of gotten it down to we have a group of very different people, but we find ways to look at each other's skill set and we find ways to acknowledge when each other goes above and beyond so that we all kind of feel appreciated. Nobody feels taken for granted in this group, whereas many years ago we had a lot of people that just made us all feel terrible, and so then nothing got done, and the things that got done were extremely dramatic, and it made it stressful, and I would say it probably held back a lot of progress, because if anybody suggested something, it would upset somebody. And so that's just sort of like a petri dish example of what can happen, what can transpire when you look for reasons to be divided versus when you look for reasons to work together. Because here's the thing. Understanding someone doesn't mean endorsing their views. It means choosing empathy. The ways to truly understand someone you would agree with is honestly to spend time with them. I would say the best way I have done this is through my walk and talks, through past podcast episodes. Sometimes it takes the pressure off just to have a off-air conversation, carpool with people, do different activities, diversify yourself so that you find yourself in different circles. Because that's what I find for myself. Like I occupy so many different circles. It's hard to it's hard to really paint me under one brush. Like I am involved in a lot of different communities. I have a lot of different conversations. I learn a lot of different things. I do a lot of different things, and I've found a lot of benefit from it. But for some people, it's very uncomfortable because it feels like if you're not around people that agree with you on absolutely everything, that you're not moving forward. But when it comes down to progressing yourself on a mental and physical level, it's probably in your best interests to have some people around you that challenge the way you think, that maybe do things differently than what you would deem to be the right way to do it. And it's something that's come up with a lot of my conversations with more experienced trainers and coaches, where they talk about how they definitely don't want an echo chamber. They don't want to be surrounded by people that agree with them or applaud them on everything, because if they were, how would they know when they're evolving? How would they know when they're getting better? How would they know when they're right? How would they know when they're wrong? And when they're surrounded by the right type of people who might not agree with them on everything, those people will acknowledge when those people are right and wrong as well. Like, so if I had a different set of values than somebody across the table and they explained their point in a way that made me see my point of view in a different light, I would acknowledge that they had a point. And if I was able to see like a flaw in how they articulated their difference of opinion, then them being the type of person they are with the character that they have would be able to see what I just explained to them. And I think that's sort of like an important part of progressing as a society, because otherwise we're yelling and screaming in our own little camps. And if anything, we regress, we devolve. And with AI coming in with all the different technology and changes and stuff, the last thing humans need to do is devolve. This is something that actually is quite helpful with AI, is because if you have a hard time seeing things from another person's point of view because you're biased, AI can make an incredibly good mediator where you can take the situation and find a way to strip it of any identifying aspects, just explain the scenario to AI, and then help yourself talk yourself through it. You're not necessarily helping AI talk through it, because AI is just going to respond to you in an unbiased point of view. And if you have any follow-up questions, it'll help you kind of field your thoughts through things. And if you need to dig deeper, you can prompt AI to utilize different talk therapy techniques, acknowledging the fact that it is simply AI and not a mental health professional. But to be able to have an unbiased participant in a discussion, even if it is a little bit robotic, to help you reflect on your thoughts instead of making decisions with emotion, is pretty valuable in today's world. So if you are looking for ways to start to see things from more people's point of view than your own, that's a great strategy. I would also say that there's probably going to come a time when we'll notice different biases between one model and the other, between Gemini and between ChatGPT and any of the other models that are coming up, because they're based off different data sets. They're going to have different users sort of training the models. So there's always going to be those subtle differences, even when the developers are programming things to keep things as ethical as possible. There's always going to be flaws and mistakes and glitches and software errors and stuff like that. So when we look at the shared human needs of society and take away like taking sides, this is where we start to look at services like food banks and at international outreach, and not necessarily like the big braggadocious, large check type things, but more so when somebody takes initiative to do what they're capable of beyond the borders of their own nation. This could be everything from someone deciding to, if they wanted to go and donate their trade to the construction of a school in another nation, that could be an example because it's boots on the ground, skilled labor, contributing a skill that may not be as common in that nation to get something done faster and to save them some expenses. This doesn't always have to be the large lump sum pledges that countries make. So there's a lot of different ways to see the necessity of looking out for people who aren't from our country, for looking out for people who don't see the world the same way we do. So going back to food bank, you donate to a food bank, you help out at a soup kitchen, and there's no telling who these people are that would benefit from it, and that doesn't matter because you know that everybody will probably come across a time when the last thing that they want to do is to ask for help, but they absolutely need help. And so when we are able to support the initiatives that are put in place to support these people, where they don't have to be under such pressure to beg, but they can actually receive support, it makes a big difference. And that said, I think it's pretty rough out there for people who are needing to utilize the food bank. So wherever you're listening from, pretty good chance your local food bank could benefit from your support. So take this as a plug to find a way to give back to your local community and just consider the fact that while we always have something to be grateful for, there's probably something that we have to spare that we can give to somebody to spread the good vibes, as it were. Now, being that this is going to be a bit of a shorter episode, if you take anything away from this today, let it be this. Before you try to change someone's mind, try to understand their heart. I've found over the years, getting to know what people think is important to them, learning like a lot of people that I disagree with still think that their dog is amazing, or people that I disagree with still care about their parents and their kids. There are extremes where a person may not care about these things, and I may find myself not being able to have anything in common with them, but those are definitely the outliers. There are people who could like the Calgary Flames, for better, for worse, and I can still work with them. I could still train with them. I would just probably make fun of their hockey team. Go Oilers, go. But aside from that, there is so many opportunities to learn. There's so many opportunities to enrich your life when you don't put yourself into a box and when you aren't always thinking about, oh, this side versus that side, or us versus them, or if that side wins, we're doomed, or if our side wins, we win. Because in all scenarios, no matter who wins, you only win if everybody wins. If you win, meaning somebody else loses, there's a deficit somewhere. And in some way, shape, or form, we're connected. So if there's a deficit in your community, you're going to have to make up for that in some way. If I am in a wealthy community and there's another community across the city that is struggling, there's no way that I won't encounter that deficit at some point. And it could show up in the pressures on the healthcare system. It could show up in the pressures in the education system when kids don't have the right environment to feel good about going to school, to be learning in the right environment. It can take on more resources. And if you were to put yourself in a bubble, then you're missing out on enriching connections. So if I tried to be like, okay, nobody can access me, I'm just going to set everything up perfectly, you are going to eliminate a lot of the things in life that makes life life. Things like going to West Edmonton Mall and hugging whoever wants a hug, for a whole afternoon and capturing it and having it get thousands of views and still be on the internet a decade later to look at again. It's these scenarios where you realize what really matters and you realize what doesn't matter, and you realize that somebody else winning doesn't matter, you losing doesn't matter. It's the fact that you build a community around yourself that no matter how many times you fall down, you always get back up. No matter how many times you have to learn a lesson, there's always going to be somebody to help bridge that gap between what you know that you know and what you know that you don't know to get you to know, you know? So at the end of the day, common ground isn't something you find, it's something you build. One brave conversation at a time. And I think there is very little that could better articulate why I changed the name of the podcast and why I think it's important to find common ground in life. And I'm not saying that you can't be passionate about the things that are important to you, and I'm not saying that you can't have your values that are important to you, but I am saying that I think it's healthy for society and for your physical and mental health to be an open-minded, lifelong learner, to be someone who finds as many opportunities to show compassion as you can, and to be someone who's level-headed and doesn't snap for a subpar reason. Just because somebody disagrees with you doesn't mean that you have to get mad about it. Because if you do, nothing will happen. And if you don't, you might learn something. So this was a little bit of a different episode, but I hope you enjoy it. It's been months since I've recorded one. I have some guests coming up. And if you enjoyed this, be sure to share it on social media, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Spotify, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, rate it 5 stars, leave a review. And thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.